citizens of Winnipeg North Riding in deciding which party to vote in the upcoming snap federal election on September 20. And allow me to read our rules for tonight. All microphones should be muted unless it is time to speak. Video camera should be on at all times. Candidates will present their opening statements for 2 minutes each. The names will be raffled on the spot as to the order of presentation. All questions will be asked by yours truly, the moderator, and each candidate can answer in each question for a maximum of 2 minutes. Each candidate is given a minute for a rebuttal on the answers of the other candidate. Candidates will present their closing statements for 2 minutes each. The same order will be followed as to the order of presentation in the opening statements. We have extended our invitation to all candidates of Winnipeg North Riding. However, the candidate of Conservative Party has declined. And also, we received no response from the Green Party, Bloc Québécois, and the Communist Party. Without further ado, let us now listen to the opening statement of each our candidates, starting off with, I'm going to draw the lots here. I have 3 here. I'll choose one. Choose the middle one. Starting off with, if your name is called, you can unmute your mic. Kevin, just a reminder, Kevin, you have 2 minutes maximum for your opening statement. Please go ahead.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, Kuya. And maybe if you just kind of like go like this when I'm 10 seconds away, that would be somewhat helpful. First and foremost, I must say this is the first time I've had this type of an experience during an election where we're having a virtual town hall. So I applaud you for taking the initiative and making it happen. It's actually been an absolute pleasure to be able to participate in the election thus far, where we've had the opportunity to literally knock on thousands of doors, trying to get a gauge in terms of what people are thinking and their expectations for the government. We've had the opportunity to meet with and discuss a wide variety of issues. So I look forward to whatever type of questions might be coming up, and I'll try to do my best in terms of answering them. I know that there has been some concern in regards to my habit of going to McDonald's on a weekly basis, and I thought maybe I'd take the opportunity to emphasize the importance of being accessible not only during the elections, but also in between elections. And that is done in many different ways. For me, for the last few decades, one of the ways was to be at a local restaurant on a weekly basis, where literally over the years, hundreds, if not even thousands of constituents have met with on a wide variety of different types of issues. I've always believed that being accessible and making sure that residents of Winnipeg North are, in fact, the number one priority has always been important to me. It doesn't take away from doing other things, of course. It's one of the reasons why we host different types of events in different parts of the riding. Every area of Winnipeg North is important to me, has been important to me, and will always be important to me. And I would like to think, as we continue to go through the next phase of the election, that
thank you,
members...
Kevin. Your 2 minutes is up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'll do the sign.
All right. Okay. So our next candidate who will be giving his or her opening statement would be, there's 2 left here. I'm going to choose one. And this is going to be Melissa. It's your turn. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kuya. My name is Melissa Chung-Mowat. I'm the NDP candidate for Winnipeg North. It is my pleasure and honor to be here tonight with you. So thank you very much for the invitation. I am really proud to live in this riding, to work in this riding, and to be part of this community. We are coming out of a pandemic. We are in a climate emergency. Many folks in Winnipeg North have shared with me over the last months how desperately we need change in our community, and not just here in Winnipeg North, but across Canada. It's people have been struggling pre-pandemic. Things have been really hard over the last 18 months. We need to make sure that we're providing the services that people need to thrive, to come out of this pandemic. Myself, I'm an Indigenous woman on my mom's side. I'm Chinese on my dad's side. My dad was an immigrant to Canada. And so much of my own passion and work has been about reaching across diverse communities, building relationships, truly listening to the needs of diverse groups of people, and finding ways to meet those needs in the community. I believe that change happens from the grassroots up. We need to meet people where they're at. We need to make sure we're connecting with people within their community, and communities know what they need to thrive. And in Winnipeg North, we have incredibly strong communities. We have incredibly, innovative communities, and we need to make sure that the people in positions of power are doing everything they can to amplify that work, to scale that work, and to create real change.
Thank you, Melissa. And of course, our last one would be, I'm going to show it to you just to make sure that we have his name here. Patrick, please go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Patrick Neilan. I'm the People's Party candidate for Winnipeg North. I got involved just like any other PPC here. We just got tired of these parties playing division tactics and keeping us divided. We have simple things we can do, like we can easily intensify management that would help poor people. But then again, the Liberals and the NDP and everybody else laughed at us. We were that party. We're the party that will stand up for your rights, just constitutional rights.
I'm sorry, Patrick. I think we're having some technical difficulty from your end.
Pumping out anti-Uyghur propaganda to the youth, so they don't believe that what's happening over there with the concentration camps are real. People's Party is a whole different thing. We're not left, we're not right, we're not center. We're just Canadians that love this country and are willing to defend our society.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Now, questions were gathered from different sectors of our communities, such as the academe, business sectors, workers, Indigenous community, immigrants, community leaders, volunteers, even homemakers, and others. All questions will be randomly picked. We have here these containers, including the questions that were actually prepared by our candidates. We may also ask questions coming directly from our live audience. So if you have any questions, ladies and gentlemen, don't hesitate to write it down in our comment section. And here is our first question. I'm going to choose it from this container. Okay. First question for everyone. Okay. Here's the question. If elected, what will you do to help the Indigenous people in Winnipeg North? Let's start off with Kevin. You have 2 minutes, sir. Please unmute your microphone, Kevin.
I think that we've made significant progress on that particular issue, Kuya. If you take a look at it, we need to focus and continue to focus on the issue of reconciliation that needs to be at the forefront. The Prime Minister, since taking government, has made a commitment in building a relationship, a new relationship with Indigenous peoples from coast to coast to coast. And we've seen many different actions to try to resolve and move forward on the whole issue of reconciliation. There's calls for action. A number of them required federal legislation that have been brought forward. Many others required the federal government playing a role with other jurisdictions, and many of those we've seen significant progress. And then, of course, there are some calls for action that don't require the federal government, but we continue to monitor it. It's enabling and empowering communities and Indigenous leadership as much as possible, and supporting and dealing with the issues that are there, that are very real. And as a national government, we have been there financially in a significant way. I would challenge anyone to come up with another government in such a short time span that has invested so much financial resources into Indigenous related matters. In Winnipeg North, there are numerous organizations during the pandemic and even prior that we have been supporting financially, and where possible to encourage that we are there in a very real and tangible way. And thanks for the 10 seconds.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And now let's hear it from Melissa. Again, the question is, if elected, what will you do to help the Indigenous people in Winnipeg North? Melissa, go ahead.
Thank you, Kuya. So the fact is, there are still communities in Canada, many First Nations communities without clean drinking water. We need to address these big challenges across Canada that Indigenous people are facing. We need to make sure that we're honoring the calls to action and truly, taking real action on them. And as far as Winnipeg North goes, we have one of the largest and a vibrant Indigenous population living here in Winnipeg North. I live in the North End. I've been working with Indigenous organizations over the last 10 years, supporting Indigenous people to find good jobs, to get housing, to secure their driver's licenses. And the amazing thing about Winnipeg North is that we have incredible innovation within the Indigenous community right here in our community, from Indigenous social enterprise, Indigenous community economic development. We have Indigenous groups developing innovative solutions to housing for youth aging out of care. We have folks doing amazing work helping Indigenous people get training and employment. We have folks here right in our community that are doing an amazing job, and we need to make sure that we're supporting this work, because incredible things will happen when these groups have access to the resources that they need to scale and amplify their work. And it does take going into those communities, building true trust and relationship, and being in ceremony with Indigenous peoples. And that's something that I've been doing over the last 10 years in my work. It's something that I live as an Indigenous woman, and it's something I'm committed to continuing if elected as MP for Winnipeg North.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And now for Patrick, the same question. If elected, what will you do to help the Indigenous people in Winnipeg North? Go ahead, Patrick.
That's the beauty about the PPC, is that our whole 4 pillars is personal responsibility, individual freedom, respect, and fairness. And in our platform, we actually have Indigenous issues in there, including the water. That's the very priority for us, to get that clean water. We also want to look at why some reservations do good and others do bad. And no one should be living in those kinds of conditions. I've seen some of these houses. It's not right. We also have a plan for property rights. We also want to come together and talk to each other and make a better deal between us. We want to get rid of the old deal, make a better deal that bonds us together as Canadians as we share this land together.
Thank you, Patrick. And our next question is a question written by Melissa, and this question is for Kevin. And here's the question, Kevin. Canadians have been suffering through the COVID-19 pandemic for over a year and a half now, and paid sick days at the federal level would have made a real difference for workers and public health. They would have saved lives. Instead of waiting until election time to say you'll bring in paid sick days, why didn't the Liberal government just do what was right and establish paid sick days months ago during the height of the pandemic? Question for Kevin. Go ahead, sir.
From day one, Kuya, the government of Canada, or Liberal Party, has been there to support in a very real and tangible ways people across Canada from coast to coast to coast. We see the creation of programs that came from virtually nowhere. We could talk about the CERB program that in essence assisted close to 9 million Canadians. We can talk about the direct payments to seniors, direct payments to people with disabilities, supports for our students or young people. We could talk in terms of the virtually doubling of the student employment or youth employment program. We can talk about the small businesses, whether it's loans and loan availability, rent subsidy. One of my favorite, the wage subsidy program, all of which covered for jobs and protected jobs. I believe that the government and by working with Canadians, other levels of government have made a profoundly positive impact in making sure that Canada would be in an excellent position to be able to move forward. What Melissa is talking about is, in fact, has been acted on by the federal government. I don't believe at the end of the day that's the only way in which we need to move forward. It would be nice to see provincial entities, whether they're new Democratic governments out west or PC governments here in Manitoba, that we also need to see provincial governments do the same thing that Ottawa's doing so that more workers would in fact be covered.
Thank you, Kevin. We're giving 1 minute comment from Melissa. If you have any, go ahead.
Definitely what we've seen through the pandemic is that the NDP has been critical ensuring that Canadians are getting the supports they need. It was the NDP that bumped up the CERB from $1,200 to $2,000, put pressure on the Liberals to do that. It was the NDP who ensured that students received the supports they need and seniors when they weren't on the agenda. And, the NDP was ready to put forward the work that needed to be done to ensure that workers received paid sick days here in Winnipeg North. We've seen how devastating lack of sick days is for workers and that people have to choose between paying their rent and going to work sick. And that's something that people should not have to do.
Thank you, Melissa. Patrick, do you have any comment to that? Go ahead if you have. Patrick, do you have any comment to that issue, to that question?
The only comment I had was like, yeah, we should have had those 6 days. They should have been better prepared. It wasn't like they didn't know. All of them knew when Taiwan told us November 19th. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll go to our next question here. This is for everyone. Okay, and here's the question. The first candidate who will answer this would be Melissa. Okay. So the question is, are you in favor of providing monetary support to all the relatives of the victims of residential school system? Melissa, 2 minutes.
We need to support of course, all survivors and thrivers of Indian and residential school system. The intergenerational impacts and trauma that residential schools caused for Indigenous people have been long-lasting and deeply felt in our community. We must make sure that we are supporting people, and that means, providing the supports they need, be it monetary. It means getting clean drinking water to every single First Nation community in Canada. It means ensuring families have the income supports they need to break cycles of poverty. It means making sure that people have housing. And all of this feeds into supporting residential school survivors and their family members. And the NDP has committed itself to truly walking the path of truth and reconciliation. And we have put forward plans for Indigenous housing strategy, for making sure that we're implementing all calls to action. And so, yes, I believe that we need to support all survivors and their families.
Thank you, Melissa. Patrick, the same question. Are you in favor of providing monetary support to all the relatives of the victims of the residential school system? Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, of course, but it goes back to what we have on the PPC platform, where we sit down and create a new deal where we include those things. It's in our platform, we have the ability to do this, to bridge the gaps that we need to bridge. And that's one of the gaps that needs to be bridged and addressed.
Thank you, Patrick. And Kevin, are you in favor of providing monetary support to all the relatives of the victims of a residential school system? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, thank you. I think that in good part, it would be widely expected that there would be some form of compensation, and it can take many different forms. It's not just straight cash on hand type of thing. We need to recognize that the residential schools is a part of Canadian history. It's something in which we all need to recognize the harm that was caused, and to step up in a very real and tangible way. Whether it's been the Prime Minister or Carolyn Bennett as a minister is kind of leading the government on the file, along with Minister Mark Miller, to ensure that we as a government are moving in the right direction. At the very least, I think that what we have witnessed is a high level of cooperation and a sense of urgency in terms of moving forward with reconciliation. Has to incorporate the residential schools and our history in dealing with the tragedies that came out of that. And financial compensation is just one aspect of it.
Thank you, Kevin. And our next question, I picked it up from this container. And this question is from Kevin. And this question is for Patrick, from Kevin Lamoureux. Patrick, who would you support if neither the Liberals or the Conservatives get enough seats to form a majority government? Patrick?
Who I would support if that were to happen? There's no other. I can't support any of those parties. I only support PPC. And a lot of our voters are people who don't vote anymore because they gave up on these parties. Yes, I support PPC, and I want a PPC minority government or full-on PPC government so we can actually do some changes. Because as long as we keep these guys in, they're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Thank you, Patrick. You have 1 minute for your comment there, Kevin.
I think that what's important is ultimately on September the 20th, Canadians will determine what type of government Canada is going to have. And I think it is important for all of us, candidates from across the country of all political parties in particular, members from the Bloc, the DPC, the Greens, and the NDP, to be very clear to the residents of Winnipeg North. Right now, it has been consistently talked about, will it be conservative or liberal governments? And if there is a minority situation, either the Liberals or the Conservatives will be looking for support. And it would be good to hear what other candidates would be doing in a situation if, in fact, there was a minority. That would be of interest.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you have any comment to that, Melissa?
I'd like to just say that Winnipeggers and people living in Winnipeg North have a choice, and they can choose between status quo and what's been happening, or they can choose for a candidate that is committed to bringing real positive change to our community. And we've seen in minority governments that you have to work in coalition, and we've seen the Liberal government pair up with the Conservatives to vote down on universal pharmacare, to vote down on a wealth tax when 89% of Canadians are in support of a wealth tax. So we've seen the Liberals in a minority situation team up with the Conservatives to vote down good policies that would benefit people living here in Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Melissa. And this question is for everyone. The first one to answer this would be Patrick this time. The question is, two statues of the British Queens were toppled down at the Manitoba's legislature grounds on Canada Day. Should these statues be restored or not? And why? Patrick.
I say we let the people decide in a referendum. And it should be something like whether we put it back up or we put it in a museum. But it should be up to the people because it's the people's property pretty much. For me, I would love to have that statue up. I know it means different things to different people, but for me, it means the same as what it means to the Hong Kongers. It means you'll never be a slave. It's in their theme song.
Thank you, Patrick. And let's go to Kevin. Two statues of British Queens were toppled down at the Manitoba's legislature grounds on Canada Day. Should these statues be restored or not? Why?
No, the concern that I would have is the fact that I believe a vast majority of Canadians want to see reconciliation. And anything that moves us forward towards a reconciliation and furthering that cause, I think is healthy for us as a nation. And I realize that there might be extremes on either sides of the issue. For me, I just want to keep the dialogue and encourage that dialogue to continue. And this is a decision that ultimately the province, I believe, is the one that's going to have to decide.
Thank you, Kevin. Melissa, two statues of British Queens were toppled down at the Manitoba's legislature grounds on Canada Day. Should these statues be restored or not, and why? Go ahead, Melissa.
I think that this is a complex situation, and people I think it's an opportunity for us to envision what spaces mean and what they look like and what they feel like for people. And so I do think that this is an opportunity to engage with the Indigenous community, to engage with the broader community about what the land represents and what we put there. And so I really do think that this is an opportunity to really bring the community together and envision something that will be truly representative of Winnipeg.
Thank you. Our next question is for Melissa, and this question is from Patrick. And here's the question, Melissa. Why are you focusing on climate change when the climate is not the biggest threat? CCP is, and they are the biggest polluters. The fentanyl manufacturers, the controllers of naloxone, they are the ones who cause housing bubbles in Canada to the point where people cannot afford to live anymore. Places like BC and Toronto, CCP is also where the virus originated. Lisa, 2 minutes.
I'm not sure that I completely get the full question, but I think that we are in a climate emergency. We can't ignore the fact that people are being deeply impacted by this climate change that's happening. We've felt it here in Manitoba with the record heat waves, with smoke. People have been displaced from their homes, and we simply can't ignore the climate crisis anymore. We need to be bold in addressing it, and that means moving away from our reliance on fossil fuels, and it means investing in housing that is energy efficient. It means creating good jobs in the green economy, and it means making sure that our transportation networks are moving towards more active transportation, better public transportation, and moving towards electric vehicles.
Thank you, Melissa. Do you have any comment to that, Patrick? Go ahead.
Yes, I do. You should really go talk to the Falun Gong community, the Hong Konger community, the Inner Mongolia community, the Taiwanese community. They are leaving their countries because of CCP. They're displaced, and when they come to Canada, they're being followed. Government knows, but is unable to help them. They know all about this. In BC, especially, they know about the dirty fentanyl money being laundered through our casinos and affecting our housing market. The NDP knows this.
Thank you, Patrick. Do you have any comment to that, Kevin?
I suspect we'll get some other questions in regards to the environment, but suffice to say that there is an environmental crisis worldwide, and for Canada to play a leadership role, and Canada often plays leadership roles on a wide variety of issues around the world. And in order for us to have credibility, we have to develop good, sound environmental policies, and that is something that I believe that we have been very successful at doing in the last number of years, and I look forward to continuing to push the importance of our environment. We're talking about the world, future generations. There is no option. It needs to be dealt with.
Thank you. And our next question is for everyone. The first one to answer this would be Kevin. And here's the question. Winnipeg North is the riding with the highest percentage of Filipino ethnic origin, highest percentage of people belonging to Filipino visible minority group, and highest percentage of native speakers of Tagalog. What can you offer to the Filipino Canadians in Winnipeg North? Kevin, 2 minutes.
And I'm very proud of that fact. I often, I chair the Canada-Philippine Parliamentary Friendship Group. In fact, when I was first elected, we created the friendship group. It was there for a very short time span of about a few months, so we had to recreate it. Ever since then, we've done all sorts of wonderful things in ensuring that we're enriching Canada's knowledge about the value of the Filipino heritage community as it continues to grow. Today, there's over 1 million people in Canada of Filipino heritage, and that's something in which we should be very, very proud of. As the chair of the Canada-Philippine Parliamentary Friendship Group, I've been able to and been fairly successful at doing a number of things, whether it's the creation of a national youth internship program, celebrating in terms of on Ottawa, raising of a flag on the Parliament Hill, Philippine flag, part of the celebration and promotion of June Heritage Month. In fact, when we passed the resolution, June 1, 2019, we were the first to host, my daughter Cindy and I, at the Maples, and we talked about the Winnipeg North as being the heart of the Filipino community here in Canada. That's something that I'm immensely proud of and will continue to advocate on all the important issues because it goes more than just the heritage. We can talk about wide selection of issues from immigrant credentials to immigration issues, whether it's sponsorships, temporary visas. There's a litany of things that are there, that are very real and tangible. But the bottom line is just to recognize the valuable contributions and how important the Philippines is to Canada. I would argue it's more important to Canada than Canada is to the
Thank you, Kevin. Your 2 minutes is up. Sorry. And let's go to Melissa. Again, the question is, Winnipeg North is the riding with the highest percentage of Filipino ethnic origin, highest percentage of people belonging to Filipino visible minority group, and highest percentage of native speakers of Tagalog. What can you offer to the Filipino Canadians in Winnipeg North? Melissa.
I've had the opportunity for the last several months to connect with many Filipino members of Winnipeg North, and people have been so gracious to share with me their concerns about the future. And the two biggest things that I keep hearing coming from the community is, number one, healthcare. Many people many Philippine Canadians in Winnipeg North work in healthcare. They've been deeply impacted by the pandemic. They've been carrying a heavy load when it comes to making sure that people are receiving the healthcare that they need. And the fact is, our healthcare system has been direly underfunded under conservative and liberal governments. We need to make sure that we are supporting our healthcare system, that we are supporting people on the front lines, all the way from healthcare aides, dietary, laundry, all the way through nurses, doctors, the entire system. I've also been hearing that, and that's something the NDP is committed to, is to supporting healthcare, to expanding healthcare, and to making sure that it is here for everyone. And the second thing I've been hearing about is immigration, family reunification, and credential recognition. We need to make sure we're creating pathways for immigration so that families can be reunited, parents can come to Canada. It's not enough to only recognize the economic contributions. We need to also recognize all the contributions that come with keeping families together, with having parents be part of the family here in Canada. And we need to also make sure that we're recognizing the skills, the experience, the abilities that people come with here, so that they can work in the fields that they're trained in, and they can contribute in all of the ways that they bring with them to Canada. And that's what I'm committed to doing in that tough work in Ottawa.
Thank you, Melissa. And for Patrick, the question, I would like to repeat it. Winnipeg North is the riding with the highest percentage of Filipino ethnic origin, highest percentage of people belonging to Filipino visible minority group, and highest percentage of native speakers of Tagalog. What can you offer to the Filipino Canadians in Winnipeg North? Go ahead, sir.
So for me, being Canadian Eurasian, and my other half just so happens to be Filipina, it's my mom. So basically, Philippines is always in my heart, and it's in a rock and a hard place, and they really, really need help. And again, it goes back to CCP aggression. CCP is conquering that area there. They need help to take back their areas. And every time we've said, okay, we help you, we let CCP continue to cede and take Philippines' sovereignty. And it goes back into the reason why none of these politicians will ever say Taiwan is an independent sovereign nation. But the PBC is willing to do that. We're willing to help the Philippines and protect them against CCP aggression.
Thank you. And our next question is for Kevin. And this question is from Patrick. Kevin, here's your question. Why did the Liberal government give our emergency supply of masks and medical equipment to CCP while telling us we did not need them? And then when it becomes endemic and we didn't need the mask anymore, they made masks mandatory instead of just telling us back in November 2019, wear masks if they wanted to. Kevin?
Thank you, Patrick, for the question. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't know. I can't really give the details of the answers specific to the question, but to say that we have a federal process that has enabled Canada to virtually do second to no other country in the world in terms of acquiring the products that we need to keep Canadians safe. Canada has, through a great effort, brought forward all sorts of personal protection items. In particular, we're thinking of masks. And it was done in two ways. One is to bring in and then to try to get industries in Canada producing it because we didn't have that local manufacturing. And private sector responded exceptionally well. I do believe that virtually since, the let's say May, June when things started to get into a situation where things were becoming difficult, that Canada had enough PPE to be able to distribute amongst the provinces. If you take a look at the most important thing, where Canada is virtually leading the world, is on the whole issue of vaccines. Getting Canadians fully vaccinated has been a priority with this government. In fact, now I believe that we're just over 80% on single doses and getting very close to that on fully vaccinated. One of the best, if not the best country in the world. We've been able to get that supply, even though we don't manufacture it here. But now, going forward, because of investments in that area, we will be able to manufacture, so we don't find ourselves in the same situation into the future.
Thanks, Kevin. Do you have any comment to that? Patrick, go ahead.
That did not answer the question as to why you handed over the medical supplies and the emergency supply we had built up to CCP during the beginning of the pandemic around December and January, which you guys shouldn't have done, because we needed that for our frontline workers, just like we did with SARS. The first SARS, we handed them everything so they could battle it. I remember those days. I was in Rexdale, Ontario, and my godmother was working at William Osler. I remember her dress up. But over here, when the pandemic happened, you guys didn't do it. You waited till later.
Do you have any comment to that, Melissa?
No comment, as I don't think it was directed towards me.
All right. Thank you very much. And let's proceed to our next question here for everyone again. And this will be answered first by Melissa. Okay. With the ongoing pandemic, do you think the private sector should have a major role in healthcare? Melissa.
We've seen the devastation that profit in our healthcare system has had in this community in this pandemic. Long-term care homes, for-profit long-term care homes have been hit hardest. And we've seen that right here in Winnipeg North at the Maples long-term care home. Having profit in our medical system, in our healthcare system, it does not belong, because we need to put people first. That means having a well-funded healthcare system, from long-term care to pharmacare to primary care to mental health care. These are all things that people have a right to access to. And it's a matter of political will to make sure that people have the healthcare that they deserve. And we've seen the devastating impacts in our community when profit does exist in healthcare. We need to make sure that we're keeping it public, that we're protecting not only people receiving healthcare, but people working in healthcare. And when you have profit, workers aren't being paid what they need. They're not getting what they need so that they can care for their patients. And so, absolutely no, the private sector does not have a role to play in healthcare.
Patrick, the question is, with the ongoing pandemic, do you think the private sector should have a major role in healthcare? Go ahead, Patrick, 2 minutes.
Well, for us, we have something in our platform where we wanted to do something where it makes less waiting times. We wanted to do some private, not 100% private, but have a little bit of private here and there, just to help with the overflow. It's a known fact that the private sectors, where most of the research comes from, where most of our medicine comes from, where all the scientific developments come from, the private sector, because they're able to use and grab whatever. But when it comes to the government-run ones, it's a little bit different. It's all regulated, and you can't pick and choose. You only can do whatever they say on the top.
Thank you. Kevin, with the ongoing pandemic, do you think the private sector should have a major role in healthcare? Go ahead, Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Kuya. We need to recognize that when it comes to the healthcare, it's actually provincial responsibility. Canada does play a role through the Canada Health Act. So we have taken the position in terms of, as an example, long-term care. We believe that there needs to be national standards, and we're going to work with provinces and territories to do that. We got to be very careful, because we're talking about provinces. So, for example, we've had NDP province of Manitoba support for private personal care homes. They allow seniors to go into those type of homes. They didn't have to do that. Whether it's NDP or conservative or liberal provincial governments that administer healthcare, they're the ones that kind of allow that private sector to come in. From a national perspective, what we do is we provide funds. My primary concern is to ensure that there's universal, no double tier. I do not want to see in any way, any form of a double tier healthcare system, one for the rich and one for the poor. That is something in which I've been advocating that we got to avoid at all costs. And I've been disappointed when I was an MLA, when I would see conservatives and NDP cut back on healthcare services. All we need to do is take a look at the North End and the Seven Oaks Hospital. That should be a jewel in the North End. But from previous governments, we have seen cuts of services, and we haven't seen the funds that are necessary in certain areas. The private sector will always have some role to play. The provinces have made that determination.
Thank you. And this question is for Melissa. This is related to the issue that we're just discussing. And this question is came from Kevin for Melissa. Melissa, here's a question for you. Consecutively, NDP and conservative provincial governments have cut services at the Seven Oaks Hospital. Do you agree with what they did? If not, what would you do to improve the services offered by Seven Oaks Hospital? Melissa.
The fact is, under the Harper conservative government, they cut the health transfer from the federal government to provinces. This had a deep impact on the healthcare system here in Manitoba. And the Liberals, in the 6 years that they've been in power, have left that funding stagnant. They have not done anything to improve funding for healthcare to our provinces. We need to make sure that the federal government takes leadership on this. Universal healthcare started off as a provincial policy put in by an NDP government. It was that pressure put on the federal government to make it nationwide. And we need to continue to protect our universal healthcare system across Canada. And that means that we do need the federal government to take that initiative to increase funding and to find a way to make sure that our healthcare system is protected.
Kevin, do you have any comment to that answer from Melissa? Go ahead. 1 minute.
To give a very specific, when Gary Filmon attempted to change services at the at the Seven Oaks Hospital, Ray Pactican, as the MP for Winnipeg North, went out and participated with us MLAs and said, no, we want that hospital to stay the way it was. When the NDP cut the emergency services to the Seven Oaks Hospital, the MP, I wasn't the MP at that time, the MP did nothing. And I think, or at least didn't appear to be doing anything. It's the province that makes the determination, but it's important that the local member of parliament express their thoughts, or at least share those thoughts, and fight for the Seven Oaks Hospital. And that's the reason why I thought it would be good to hear the question. No matter what party's in power, we need to recognize the importance of the Seven Oaks Hospital and the role it plays in our community.
Thank you. Patrick, do you have any comment to that issue? You have 1 minute.
My camera froze. I didn't hear the question.
Oh, okay. The question is actually addressed to Melissa. And here's the question. And this question was from Kevin. Consecutively, NDP and conservative provincial governments have cut services at the Seven Oaks Hospital. Do you agree with what they did? If not, what would you do to improve services offered by Seven Oaks Hospital? 1 minute only.
No problem. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't cut any of that. I would increase that by cutting things that we don't need, like the WHO. You don't need to listen to the WHO. Tedros was replaced by Xiaoping himself to keep Taiwan out. So why are we shipping money there? We could be putting that money into those hospitals, into the seniors, or into pharmacare. All we have to do is cut the unnecessary things, stop giving to dictators, and give to the people and empower the people in our riding. If we take that money and weaken them, we empower not only our people here, but we empower the people over there as well.
Thank you. And again, question for everyone. This time, Patrick will answer first. And then after Patrick, it would be Kevin. And then last one would be Melissa. Here's a question. Patrick, how do you see Winnipeg North in the next 4 years during your tenure as its representative in Ottawa? 2 minutes.
I see it strong as free. I see it as the shame that a lot of Canadians have when I'm door knocking. They tell me, "Oh, great shame. I want to undo that. I want them to be proud again that they're in this country. I want them to be reminded every day why they came here. They came here for freedom. They didn't come here to find out that there is no freedom. They came here to find out there is freedom, and there's people willing to stand up for it." I want this writing to be strong and free, and I want to keep certain things out like CCP, subversion. I want our children to grow up strong and free and not be debt-ridden because these political parties have been borrowing money and shipping it out to their friends and passing the debt to our children.
Kevin, how do you see Winnipeg North in the next 4 years during your tenure as its representative in Ottawa? Kevin.
Well, I would like to believe that we'll see less poverty as we have seen over the last number of years, where the federal government, for example, has increased the Canada Child Benefit Program after, in essence, creating the new format of it, which lifted literally thousands of children out of poverty, many hundreds in Winnipeg North. We did the same thing in regards to seniors by the increase to the GIS. We're now giving the 10% increase for 75 plus. So dealing with the issue of poverty is something in which I take very seriously. We've talked a great deal about reconciliation, but we also need to recognize the importance of jobs and our environment. One of the programs I'm very proud of is the Greener Build Home program, which allows for people of all over Canada, but hopefully in Winnipeg North, where I'll be pushing it, to get these applications for grants that would enable them to improve their homes, make them more energy efficient. That creates jobs. It's better for the environment, and Winnipeg North stands to gain greatly by the promotion of that particular program. So continuing to support summer students programs, looking at ways in which government can make a difference by expanding our economy and at the same time providing the important social services that are so critical for all Manitobans.
Thank you, Kevin. Melissa, how do you see Winnipeg North in the next 4 years during your tenure as its representative in Ottawa?
Again, we've been hit hard in this pandemic, and over the last 6 years of Liberal leadership, we've seen the cost of living go up. We've seen housing become less and less affordable. We've seen, folks struggling deeply in our community. And what we need is a leader and people in positions of power who are committed to fighting for our communities. And that means fighting for universal pharmacare, fighting for housing for all. It means fighting for childcare, and it means making sure that workers in our community earn the wages they need to live their lives, that they're protected. We're fighting for real change here in Winnipeg North, and this is a movement we're building for the long term, so that not only our community in the next 4 years, but our communities and for future generations we set up a good base to fight our climate emergency, to fight growing inequality in our community, to fight racism, and to fight, against the many things that are making it really hard for people in our community to live a good life. And this is a big moment for Winnipeg North to send a bold statement about the future that we're really fighting for, the future we deserve, and the one where we can all come out of it together. The status quo has not been working. We need to make different choices. If we want different outcomes, we need to make different choices.
Thank you, Melissa. And our next question is for Patrick. And this question is from Melissa. Patrick, Canadians are concerned about how they will pay for the cost of the COVID-19 pandemic and our economic recovery. At the same time, we have real needs to invest in things like tackling the climate crisis, affordable housing, and expanding healthcare in order to meet the needs of all Canadians. A wealth tax would help raise the needed revenue for the priorities that Canadians are telling the government to address. Polling shows that 89% of Canadians support a wealth tax on the ultra rich. Do you support a wealth tax to help strengthen the public services and social safety nets we all count on? Patrick, 2 minutes.
I support cutting taxes, even for the rich. I support taxes for all of us, regardless of what status we have.
Okay. Kevin, do you have any, or Melissa, do you have any comment to that?
We have an unjust tax system in Canada. We have large corporations who've benefited and profited billions of dollars off of this pandemic, who've received government funding, and then have paid dividends to their shareholders. We need to make sure that we have the taxation system in place that taxes the ultra rich and large corporations so that we can have the services that we need here, and so that isn't falling on the shoulders of everyday people.
Kevin, do you have any comment to that? You have 1 minute, sir.
One of the first things that we did when we taken government back in November 2015, I guess it would have been, is we brought in a budget and legislation that ultimately put a special tax on Canada's 1% wealthiest, the wealthiest 1% of society, and we reduced the taxes for the middle class. The Liberal Party is the only party that actually voted in favor of that. So, and it's not to take anything away from other candidates that are running in Winnipeg North, but that is the fact of the matter. We can talk about it, but what it all comes down to is how we're voting inside the House. And on that particular issue, we were the only party that voted in favor of putting a tax on the richest 1%.
Thank you. And it's now 8:57. This will be our last question, and after this will be the closing statements from each of our candidates. And our last question is, and the first one to answer this would be Melissa. Here's the question. Do you agree that people should be required to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination when attending public events? 2 minutes, Melissa.
We need to make sure that we're protecting our community, that we're protecting children who are not yet vaccinated. So many children in our community under the age of 12 remain unvaccinated. So I do agree we need to make sure that we're protecting people, and that's protecting people in public spaces. There's much work to be done to make sure that we come out of this pandemic together and come out of it safer and better. And that includes protecting folks in public spaces, protecting children, and protecting those who are, immunocompromised.
Patrick, do you agree that people should be required to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination when attending public events? Go ahead, Patrick. 2 minutes.
I think Patrick lost his signal.
Okay, so let's go to Kevin. Do you agree that people should be required to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination when attending public events?
Yes, thank you, Kuya. I agree with Melissa. I like her answer, and it is about the betterment of for all of us. The higher and the more people that get fully vaccinated, the safer we will all be. And a good example is to take a look at the Filipino Street Festival, which ended today. Here you have a fenced-off area, and when you're inside the fence, there was a high level of comfort because people knew that everyone that was coming in was fully vaccinated. And people there's many people not wearing masks, but there's many people wearing masks. It's an outdoor venue. I think what's important to recognize is that we continue to listen to science and health experts so that we will collectively be able to get out of the coronavirus issue and start to really focus our attention on the economy and building back stronger and healthier communities. So I think that people should continue to support what our healthcare experts are telling us.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we lost Patrick there, and we will just wait for him to reconnect to us. And it's time to hear our candidates as they give us their closing statements. As we conclude our forum tonight, let's hear again the final statement from each of our candidates. Again, you will be given 2 minutes for your closing statement. Let's start off now with Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
We have an opportunity here in Winnipeg North. Our community has been deeply impacted, and I often hear that folks in Winnipeg North feel that we're not taken as a priority, and that we have so many things here in our community that we desperately need around healthcare, housing, infrastructure, education, and so I'm committed to being a leader for this community, to really fighting the big challenges that we're facing. It is so important to be accessible to constituents. There's no doubt about that. We also need more from our leaders. We need folks in positions of power who are fighting the big fight around healthcare, around pharmacare, around poverty, around climate, around income inequality and injustice. Around racism in our community. These are big issues, and we need someone with who's bold and brave and is willing to take these issues head on with community at heart. This is important. We have an opportunity to send a strong message about the future that we really deserve here. Winnipeg North deserves so much more. We have a strong community here, and I'm so honored to be on the ballot and to be considered in this election.
Thank you, Melissa. And now let's hear the final statement. Closing statement from Kevin.
Yep. Thank you, Kuya. Let me maybe take a bit of a different approach by saying that for me personally, ensuring that what's happening in the constituency of Winnipeg North is taken from here and heard on the floor of the House of Commons. There's 338 members of Parliament. Not one MP has spoken more than I have in the last 10 years inside the House of Commons or on the floor of the House of Commons. The advocacy, making sure that Ottawa understands what is happening in Winnipeg North is a priority number 2 for me. My first priority is the people of Winnipeg North. And that's why I make myself accessible every week to listen to and hear what constituents have to say. If we take a look at the last 18 months, we've contributed to programs like CERB, the wage subsidy program, helping seniors, disabilities, youth, and so many other programs, nonprofits, charitables, invested billions and billions of dollars to support Canadians to get out of this pandemic. I believe it's time now that we turn the page. We've brought the vaccines to Canada. They're here. People should go out and become fully vaccinated. It's time that we turn the page and start building back stronger and healthier communities. Create jobs and opportunities, invest in education, protect our environment. These are all the types of issues I've been talking about for the last 10 years and will continue to advocate for Winnipeg North in Ottawa and be accessible to the constituents of Ottawa. And I ask for their support.
Thank you, Kevin. I just got a message from Patrick that he is not able to reconnect. So on behalf of our producer, Aldous Guzman, this is Kuya Noel Lapus of the City of Pegwatch. We are here to inform, educate, and engage our communities on issues that affect us all. Thank you and good evening. Mabuhay Winnipeg, mabuhay Canada, Miigwech.
Thank you, guys.